People are afraid that they won't fit in, that they're going to be different. They're going to be looked at as a different person. I built an entire life about being different because your greatest opportunity usually isn't hiding in what you lack. It's hiding what you stopped seeing. That's where you were. You wanted to see something, but you were kind of pushing it in the back. You didn't think it was valid. You validated exactly who you are and what you did. And you did a good job. You really did.
And I was hiding for a long time because it wasn't quote unquote spiritual. It wasn't love and light. It wasn't accepted in these communities that I like to play in.
What you did is what I called, it's hiding in what you stopped seeing.
Welcome back to the Power and Purpose podcast. I am your host, Vanessa Soul. Thank you so much for tuning in and investing your time and your energy into tuning in today's episode. I don't take it for granted, and I truly appreciate it. And I'm super excited for today's guests. We have Jack Magid, founder of Finding Next and creator of Unique Career Positioning Process that helps professionals uncover opportunities hiding in plain sight. I am super excited for this conversation. Jack, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Vanessa, you know what? As you were introducing me, I found myself thinking that most of us spend our lives introducing ourselves by what we've done, our job, our accomplishments, our title. But that's really rarely the most interesting part of the story. The interesting part to me is who we've become through those experiences. Because once you understand that, you stop asking yourself, what should I do next? And start asking, what have I done all along?
And my signature question that I love asking all of my guests before we get into the meat and potatoes of our conversation is a question that allows us to explore who we are today outside of the accomplishments and the titles and all of the things. And that question is, who are you and who are you not?
That I'm a very, very, very different guest. I'm the Fruit Loop in a bowl of Cheerios. Same shelf, completely different flavor. I've got a split operating system. Half of me is analytical, structured, systematic. The other is relentless, curious, creative. And I'm always asking, what is everyone else missing? Most people lean on one direction or the other. I've always lived on the intersection of both. That's what allowed me to spend over 40 years helping Fortune 100 brands reposition themselves and eventually helping people do the same thing. My focus changed. The way I saw things really didn't, because I've never been interested in what's obvious. I'm always looking for the thing underneath the thing. And, because what happens is I see in people why they've stopped seeing in themselves. So I really spend an awful lot of time in the psychological side of a human being as opposed to the business side. So for me, it's people first, profession second.
Interesting. And who are you not?
I'm somebody that doesn't do the obvious. I'm somebody that doesn't give you ordinary, because you know what? You can get ordinary from anybody. So my watchword is differentiation. Everything that I do is very, very carefully choreographed based upon differentiation.
I love your unique perspective and I love your unconventional approach. Most people believe that growth requires reinvention all of the time. And sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. So what is your perspective on that? Because I know you have a different perspective. Does it really require reinvention or not? What do you think?
Most people don't need reinvention. I don't really believe in that. They need what I believe is recognition. If you're unhappy, normally people say, oh, you got to burn down everything and become someone new. Wrong, totally wrong. The most successful brands that I've worked on in my career, they don't succeed by pretending to be something they weren't. They succeed by understanding what made them uniquely valuable and expressing it differently or more clearly than their competition. And what I found is people are no different. Most accomplished professionals that I've run across already have experience, wisdom, and the strengths that they need for what happens next. Their lives have been leaving clues all along. And I think that's kind of the thread. And you'll hear, a lot of what I talk about is the thread that goes through somebody's life. So the question that I get faced with is that, you don't need to figure out who you need to become. It's what has my life been trying to show me? Because once you can answer that, now you don't have to start over. You're starting from strength. Basically, what have I been doing all along?
So I love that question where you guide people to this question, right? Because everyone wants to reinvent themselves. And you're like, wait. Before you reinvent yourself, just sit with this question. Who have you been all along, or what skills have you had all along? And so what are some of the types of responses that you get? Because this might help our listeners answer this for themselves.
What happens is you run into people and they give you a litany of experiences from a business perspective. Everybody has a great story. Everybody is superior. Everybody has tremendous value. And what I say, what you've created in my term, is you've created what I call parity superiority. Everybody is great. But now that everybody is great, you're all on equal terms. How do you then elevate? How do you separate? How do you differentiate? That's basically what I do for a living in terms of my backgrounds in advertising and branding and marketing communications, all of that stuff. And when you have a parity product and you have a parity person, which is similar, how do you differentiate? And it's not the 17% active ingredients. It's who are you? What are you going to give to me that I can't get from somebody else? And the benefit that I try to instill in people is that you, Vanessa, naturally you cannot be replicated by any other human being in the world. Why? You have a distinct DNA. Nobody has your DNA. So going in, you've got a benefit, right?
I invite the listeners to really sit with this. If you are in a season, and Jack and I, we're not done. Like we're just entering into the conversation. We're just hitting the tip of the iceberg here. But I want you guys, if you're open, if you're receptive to this conversation, to really start sitting with this. Who have you been all along? Like, what do you have all along? Not the titles, not the accomplishments. I know so many of my listeners have done all the Tony Robbins events, and they have done all these marathons and ran 20 miles and all these things. Okay, great. If that's you, then you have natural ambition. For someone else, you might have creativity that is just oozing out of you. And so instead of reinventing yourself, you just tap into your creativity. For some people, I know people that are they're like a ball of inspiration. They walk into the room and they just light the room up and they're just inspirational. For others, it's leadership. And so just sit with that, whatever that means for you, as Jack and I are continuing to go through this conversation. Now, Jack, my next question for you is, what happens when people abandon skills, experiences, and strengths that still have value, but they might abandon it because they think here they are, they're under this illusion that they have to reinvent themselves. But what happens when they abandon those skills and experiences?
Yeah, I think most people abandon, and because starting over is very seductive, it's very sexy. It feels like you can leave the past behind and start fresh. So, um, it's a little bit of a cop out. You're not willing to do the work. And the work is kind of figuring out who you are, and it feels like you can leave the past behind and start fresh. But there's one problem with that, is that you still have to take you with you. You can't ever not be who you are. So I know that firsthand because I spent a tremendous part of my life wondering if I fit in, starting over. Growing up my entire life, we moved every 3 years because of my father's job. You know,
Oh, wow.
the result of that was I lived in 5 states, went to 2 middle schools, 2 high schools, 2 colleges. Every time I started, it gave me a chance to become somebody different. But you know what? I was never different. I was the same person. Every new school, every new schoolyard, I relied on survival skills because as a young kid, you got to figure out what are your survival skills. Mine was I walked into a room, I read it, I figured out who's confident, who's pretending, who's in charge. On top of that, I was a really sick kid growing up. I had asthma, and most boys, guys, sports is a way to get into a relationship. Sports wasn't my way in, so I had to have observation and humor and listening. So I had to learn to figure out how to adapt. And what happened was that adaptation in technical terms is called pattern recognition. I never knew what pattern recognition is. Those are words that never would come out of my mouth, right? So then what happened? I'm telling you my whole story here. My father, who was a very, very dominant personality, decided that when I finally graduated high school, and I did, he figured, you know what, you should major in accounting. I think he was looking for me to have a safe career to get off of his back. That lasted about 5 minutes. Can't picture me as an accounting person, right? So I figured, let me try the ologies. So I figured I'm going to try psychology, philosophy, sociology, and then management. The registrar really loved me. Okay, the registrar. Okay, I kept changing majors like my underwear. For those looking in, they're looking at me and they're saying, you know what? You probably can't make up your mind. And honestly, I couldn't. I had no idea where I was going. But what was interesting about this story is that out of all those majors, I really disliked them on an 80% level. But there was a 20% of all of those pieces that really fascinated me. And years later, I was able to articulate that accounting gave me structure. Psychology is the way people think. Philosophy questions underneath the answers. Sociology is how people behave in groups, and management, how things work together. And then I finally found marketing, and marketing led me to advertising. And there it was. Advertising was the first place where all those disconnected 20% came together. I was collecting pieces of the right career. And the first time in my life, I could see where all those seemingly disconnected pieces came together. So that's kind of how I found how to fit in and not to change. So if I am smart in one piece of my life, I'm able to figure out how to identify a situation in a clear, concise fashion.
I want to repeat something that you said about how seductive it is to just start fresh. Because I was, if you don't mind, just me sharing my personal experience, I literally just probably am still going through, or 3 months ago it started. I was looking at my Instagram page and I was like, should I just delete this page? I literally sat there and I've done this before. In 2019, I had 40,000 followers, 35,000 followers, something like that. And I deleted the page because I had went through spiritual awakenings and went to all these retreats and came back and just found myself in a different identity, which is great. Did I need to restart everything? We'll never know because I actually did delete everything at that time. But this time around in 2026, I got promoted to become the CEO of an online international school. So different from how my listeners and my audience, how they know me. They know me as Vanessa, the life coach, the alternative therapist, the energy healer, the psychic, the astrologer. That's how they've been knowing me since ever. I've had that business running for the last 5 years. So when I took on the CEO position again, I was like Jackie, you gotta, if you could imagine my finger being on that button that says delete profile, I was gonna do it, and something said just relax, just relax. Like yes, you're shifting. You don't always, everything doesn't always have to be pretty packaged. People see the CEO identity and then they see the astrologer that was more active 4 months ago. Oh well. So I started to just realign myself. I chose that path and realigning branding instead of just reinventing, throwing out the baby with the bathwater, shutting down the Instagram, starting all this other stuff all fresh and starting over again. So I am literally going through what you're talking about, and I appreciate your message what because the mind likes to identify another frame. Our minds like framework. You just said how logical you are. We like frameworks, or we like words that will give us a different concept. Are we realigning ourselves if we're not reinventing? What are we doing?
What happens is, it means your greatest opportunity usually isn't hiding in what you lack. It's hiding what you stop seeing. And again, that's where you were. You wanted to see something, but you were kind of pushing it in the back. You didn't think it was valid. You validated exactly who you are and what you did, and you did a good job. You really did. You
And I
prevented.
was hiding for a long time because it wasn't quote unquote spiritual. It wasn't love and light. It wasn't accepted in these communities that I like to play in. So you're
Exactly.
spot on.
What you did is what I called it's hiding in what you stop seeing. Okay, because
Oof.
most accomplished professionals spend years accumulating experience, skills, judgments, perspective. The problem is they don't have enough to offer, and they don't think that the world is going to buy what they have to sell. They're not going to buy their act. They're not going to buy their experience. So that's why, I never begin when I have a client by asking them, so Vanessa, what do you want to do? Instead, I ask them, what is it about you that makes you you, right? Again, not your resume, not your profession, you, the person, because that's where your real advantage is. Again, I'm being a little redundant, but it really is to
It's
make the point,
perfect. It goes back to that recognition that you were
you
talking
know?
about at the beginning.
Yeah, because most people don't think that think that their career experience is what sets them apart. And it isn't. It's not your career experience. It's what makes them different is what makes you unique, you know? And that gets back into the whole, I prefaced the parity superiority. Everyone's exceptional if you've got all of these capabilities and qualities, smart people, experience, great resumes, right? So if everybody's superior, that means nobody is. Everyone is now average. There's a philosophy that I try to instill is that competence gets you considered, differentiation gets you chosen. And the irony to that is that and this is you, okay, I'm picking up on this, the things that make you different usually feel completely ordinary to you. They've always been there, right? You assume everyone thinks the way that you do. Not really. You know, that's why outside perspectives matter a lot. Not because somebody knows, you better. I don't know you at all, right? But, there are things that the outside perspective gives because what they can see, what I do for a living, is I can see what becomes invisible to you. You've got the blinders on, most really, really good people have peripheral vision. They can see left and right. Jack Magid sees 360.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. And I love that you were mentioning this multifacetedness, I guess, or these layers, or how we can have multiple gifts. And somewhere along the way, there's this trend that you had to niche down, niche, 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 niche. And I believe that it programmed people to try to fit themselves in this little tight box. And that's what you and I are talking about today. Like you don't, and you came on here like I'm a Fruit Loop. I don't fit into a box. I do unconventional things. I dance around the box. That's what I heard. That was my interpretation while you were saying that. I'm like, oh yeah, he's running circles around that box that everyone else is trying to fit into. Do you think that people are just so uncomfortable with being outside of a box or a single identity or a single niche? Is it scary to most people? What is it?
I think most people think they've got a career problem, and they really don't. They've got what I would believe is an identity problem. So again, I start where most people don't start. Again, everything that I do is a very different kind of take and a different process. My problem, let me tell you my problem. My obstacle is that what I do, nobody else does. So for me, I have a hard time explaining to people this is different. And people will say, Jack, are you a shrink? No, I'm not a shrink. Are you a life coach? No, I'm not a life coach. Are you a financial? No, I'm not well, what are you? What I do that's very different is that I use a strategic business process and assessment, a root cause analysis for people where the other side of the world uses strictly psychological or career coaching mentality. And I'm
Sure.
not trashing that, I'm not dispelling that, but that's not what I do. So most people need a frame of reference, okay? And I say if the world operated only on a frame of reference, Columbus would have a really, really hard time getting Queen Elizabeth to give him some money to discover the new world, right? Nobody believed that the world was round. It's totally flat. There's no way we're going to get this. So the ability to look at something differently, that's why selfishly, I'm not right for everybody. And I don't want to be right for everybody. So where I start is that I ask people, are you uncomfortable or are you unhappy? Because being uncomfortable means you're growing. Being unhappy means you're misaligned. The next phase I asked people, are you more afraid of making a change or if what happens if you don't,
Oof,
right?
powerful.
So it's the ability to dig down and find out not only the logic side, but I want the heart. I want to know really what's driving one of the worst words in career coaching is follow your passion. I want to jump through the screen and strangle the person that invented that question.
Ditto.
You don't follow passions, you follow a purpose. What's your purpose on this earth? Okay, it ain't your passion. I got a lot of passions. I run and I bike and I ski and I play golf and I've got grandchildren and I like eating and I experience, those are passionate things, but I got a lot of them. None of them is making me any money. Okay.
Yes, 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 yes.
Your
How
purpose
can
can.
someone find purpose without changing everything? So how can they find purpose or access their purpose without reinventing themselves? Because some people might think like, oh, if I tap in and go all in on my purpose, I have to reinvent myself. And then they go back in that loop, right? So how can they embrace their purpose without changing everything?
Most people spend months worrying about the risk of making a change while paying the price of staying exactly where they are. Change is for the unhappy. Perspective is for the uncomfortable. Most people get those things backwards, especially high achievers, because they've spent years defining who they are by what they do. That's their life. That's their identity. And you know what? I know that really, really well because I did it. For years, I thought I was the ad guy. Then one day I wasn't. I got fired and it felt like I lost my identity. My entire life just stopped. But I really, and again, this was not a cause and effect that I was that smart. I was a basket case. I couldn't get out of bed. Oh my God. I just bought a house. I got two young kids. I got a wife. Like, what am I going to do? Right. I lost my title. I lost my job. I lost my income, but I hadn't lost me. And it took me a while. And that's where I try to instill in people. You got to come to grips with the person underneath is still there. You didn't lose that. And that's really what I wish I had way back then. Titles change, jobs change, companies change, but the thread that runs through who you are, that's not going away. That's going to be there all along.
sometimes people think they're stuck, stuck in a job, stuck in an identity, stuck not knowing what to do. Um, I think being stuck is a little bit of an illusion. I think sometimes people are just in a waiting period, or they're preparing for something and they have no knowledge of it. What is your perspective on being stuck, identity wise or career wise? And if someone is feeling stuck, do you have a suggestion?
People come to me when what they're doing no longer works. I hate my job. I lost my passion. I don't know what's next. Hating your job is not the real problem. Sometimes it's a sign that the way you're working is no longer aligned with who you are and what you really
Yes.
want to do. So again, in your world, it's that alignment. You can't register tilt. You know the term register tilt?
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm proud of you. I've not met anybody that knows that term.
Yeah.
I'll tell you where it comes from. You know what
I'm
a
a
pinball machine
reader.
is?
A what machine?
A pinball machine,
Yeah, I know what a
right?
pinball machine is. Yeah.
So what happens when you shake the machine? It tilts.
Yeah.
So when you shake somebody's life, they are registering tilt. They're out of whack. You can't shake the machine. You got to play the game the way it was designed because the machine is smarter than you every time. You're trying not to get that ball to go down the drain. You're trying
Mm-hmm.
not to be stuck. So you're trying everything else but the real thing that you need to try. You got to understand that if you look at who you are and what you've done, that roadmap is probably there. You just haven't been able to see it. And that's kind of what
Right.
I try to do is I try to look back and say, let's talk about what you did. What was successful? What made you happy? Why do people come to you with a question that they don't come to anybody else? You have it in your heart. It's so funny when I think about this thing. I wake up and I say to myself, "Oh my God, I'm Dorothy on the yellow brick road, right? It was there all along.
All
Somebody
along.
needs to find it."
I just love this. And I'm just gonna like rehash a few things that you said. Can you repeat the thing about the hiding our hiding our gifts from ourselves? Repeat that one more time for us.
Say it again. The
Where
hiding.
Yeah, like we were talking about my experience and you were saying, or no, I was hiding myself, like hiding some of my skills because it didn't fit into the astrologer. It didn't fit into the coach and the healer. So the skills set that I have now that I get to express as a CEO of an online school and company, it's almost like I couldn't really see my at the top. If you would have asked me January 2026, what are your plans for the year? Do you see yourself as a CEO? I would have been like, oh, absolutely not. Like I'm an entrepreneur. I do my own thing. I'm an astrologer. I'm this. I'm that. I'm that. I don't want to run a company. But it was almost like I wasn't recognizing some skill sets that I've had all along. Like the Dorothy thing, I've had these all in my real estate career. I've had it all along in other careers. When I got my master's degree, I've had this skill set, this experience all along, but because it didn't fit into this healer, spiritual, intuitive advisor, I shoved it to the side. And then that was only able to last for so long until it became I was either uncomfortable or I actually think I was a little bit of both. You said uncomfortable or unhappy. I think I was dealing with both, if that's possible. I'm sure it is.
Yeah.
And then this opportunity came to me and I jumped up at and it was just like an automatic yes. Finally, someone saw me before I saw myself.
What's happening is that, and again, it's not fair. I'm not judging, okay, because people don't. I couldn't do what you do, not for 1 minute. People really can't do what I do because I've got a very, very different life and a very
Yeah.
different background. Tips that I would give you if you were my
Yeah.
client, I would say, Vanessa, you've got such incredible range of experience. Okay. what you need to do is practice something I call cross-pollination. Okay. Cross-pollination is taking some experience, your real estate experience, taking your intuitive background, your CEO experiences, right? Taking those pieces and using that in a new environment. And what cross-pollination does is that new environment has never seen a real estate solution to solve a emotional problem. Does that make sense?
Perfect sense.
That's what cross-pollination does. Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I did with my career and my life because I was forced to do it. Unfortunately, I was never smart enough to articulate that. There was no way in the world I could have ever figured that out. It took me many, 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 many decades based upon my life and my change and my career. I mean, I've worked at more advertising agencies on hundreds of different brands than, most people in their entire life. But that's been my
Mm,
life. Change has been a constant. Either fortunately or unfortunately, change for me is the easiest thing for me to do because I
yes.
had to learn to survive that.
And now you're an expert in change.
I'm a change agent.
You're an adaptability. I know you can't, I know we can't fit you into a box, but you have so much wisdom about adaptability and and that's why you recommend that people just adapt, shift, realign instead of burning down the house and trying to build a new one. Just adapt, cross-pollinate. Bring everything together. Bring all the skills in one pot and hold them in your arms and see what you can create from there, right?
Exactly. You've articulated it beautifully. And
Yeah.
most people don't think that way. Look at your experience, right? You were ready to throw out a significant benefit that I guarantee you is going to help you somewhere down the road. You may not
Yeah.
be able to create a cause and effect now, but I guarantee you, you will look back and say, oh my God, okay, this experience, this element, this post that I did is now relevant. It may not have
Right.
tomorrow or next month or next year, but it will never, ever leave you. That's the benefit that you've got. And that's the benefit that your audience has to come away with. Don't ever,
Yes.
ever throw out who you are. You got a
Yes.
gigantic silo. Just keep filling it. Okay. Because those
Just keep filling
experiences
it.
at some point in time are going to be beneficial and they're going to help you. That's my
Yes,
message.
yes. I love it. I love your insight, Jack. Okay, so now for the listeners who are listening, there's probably a handful of people who are like, I'm reinventing myself. I am merging all my stuff together. I am doing what Jack is saying. What can they continue to expect? Is there any suggestions, guidelines, tips that you can give to people who are already 50%, 80%, and just that realignment, that realignment?
Every one of your listeners, just write this down. Answer a simple question. What makes you you? Because most people who feel that are stuck, they ask the question, what should I do next? That's always
Right.
the wrong question, the first question to ask. Because if you don't understand who you are, you're never going to get to where you need to get. Start with who you are, not your resume, not your LinkedIn, not your job titles. You got to look back at your life. What have you always been drawn to? What comes naturally to you? What frustrates you? What do other people consistently come to you for, right? Look for patterns, look for that thread. It's there. You know what? I think, and you tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think anything I talk about is that cerebral. An old term, it's not rocket science, it's really common sense. But the hard part for most people, they don't want to do the work. Introspection is tough. It's hard. It's personal, right? It's painful.
Maybe people are they don't merge all of their experience and skills together because they feel like if they do that, they're going to be misunderstood. So they feel like, oh, if I just if I burn down the house and reinvent myself, then I'll get more understanding, I'll get more acceptance, I'll get more validation because it'll be more clear for people. But if I if I start to cross-pollinate everything, people are gonna be confused by me. Is that a real concern, or not really?
Your question is absolutely dead on right. People are afraid that they won't fit in, that they're going to be
Okay.
different. They're going to be looked at as a different person. I built an entire life about being different because I had to, but it's worked out for me. So remember, the only way somebody's going to buy you, buy your act, buy your business, buy your story is by you've got to be able to offer two things. Remember, nobody cares what you do. I don't care that you're a psychic, person. I don't care that you sell cars. What's the end benefit? By you doing what you're going to do, how is it going to benefit me? And that's what's called an end benefit. And importantly, that's the cost of entry. That's going to get you in the door, but that's not going to get you the job or the career or the satisfaction. What I do differently, what I try to give my clients and my friends is an understanding that end benefit, what you're going to do for me is the cost of entry. What makes you different is what's called an added value. What are you going to do that nobody else will do? How are you going to go to the end of the earth and convince me and articulate that to me that why should buy you versus anybody else? And that's one of the questions I come in with loaded guns. Vanessa, why should I buy you versus anybody else? That's the number one question you have to answer. If you can't answer that question, you got to go back to the drawing board, or you don't have a story, you don't have a business, you don't have something that I want to embrace, whether it's being your friend or buying your business or buying your service. Why should I buy you versus anybody else? The single most critical question in business today.
Gosh, I love this. So as we start to close out, I hope this is landing for you guys. You might have to rewind to really soak this in because it is thinking different. This is thinking outside the box. This is going against the programs and the branding that we've all been sold. Niche into one thing, do this one thing, be the best lawyer and don't do anything else. Like this goes against all of that, right? Because you might already be feeling that you're more than just a lawyer. You're you're maybe you're a lawyer and a gardener. Like, and now is your time to really, let this conversation guide you into merging and bringing all of your experiences together instead of instead of going the reinvention route, if that resonates with you. So I just love this conversation. I hope it's landing. Jack, do you have a book recommendation or a quote that you would like to leave us with?
The quote that I live by every single day is somebody you probably never heard of. I'm being facetious. It's Maya Angelou. People will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel.
Yes, and we're ready for the book rec too.
Reasonable hospitality. Okay. I strongly, strongly, strongly encourage anybody that's listening, just Google him, go on a TED Talk, and I'm not going to tell you the story, but I'm going to leave your listeners with homework. Google unreasonable hospitality and look up the hot dog story. Okay. I promise you, you will absolutely thank me. It's one of the best examples I've ever seen of what happens when you stop asking, what am I supposed to do? And start asking, what could I do that no one would expect, added value, unreasonable hospitality. That's what makes you different. That's what's going to elevate you and your life and your career. So, those are the two things that I live my life based upon.
Thank you so much. We have Jack's links here in the show notes. We have his website, we have his Facebook, Instagram, and his LinkedIn. So make sure you connect with Jack, especially if this episode resonated with you. Jack, thank you so much for your time, your wisdom, and your energy. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been my pleasure. And you know what? If we help one person today, then I'm glad we did it.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of helping one person, if you know of one person in your life right now that needs to hear this message because of where they're at in their life, please send them a text message. Let them know you're thinking about them today, you are listening to a certain podcast. They popped up on your mind and heart. They will appreciate that. And then copy and paste the link. Send this podcast episode to at least one person. If 10 of you do that, that helps us get this message out because so many of us are going through shifts and we need to know our options. We need to know that we don't have to wipe the slate clean. We don't have to throw out our experience. There's a different way to embrace who we are, to see who we are, to accept ourselves and to just realign, right? So please send this episode to at least one person. You'll do the show a favor as well. That way more people find out about the Power and Purpose podcast and more people can meet Jack. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Namaste and have a great day.